The Dolphins are looking to trade Jalen Ramsey. The Saints are in a bit of a pickle with Derek Carr. Tyron Smith retires, and the draft is a little over a week away, and we have a lot to cover. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Wednesday, April 16 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov, back after missing a couple of days. We still had me in those episodes, but my good friend Ben Allen took care of a lot of it. Let me bring him in here right now. We have a lot to cover here around the NFL. Ben, quickly getting to you. Thank you so much for holding the fort down. How's everything going?
It was good. Yeah, it's always nice to be able to still have you on episodes when you can't do the live thing. So they just have to deal with me at the top of the show. So I guess there's worse things to deal with. Like trying to figure out what's going on with your team, for instance, which is what the Miami Dolphins are trying to do right now. They've got to figure out who's going to be on this roster in the upcoming season. And right now it seems a little uncertain. We know that according to Chris Greer during a news conference on Tuesday, that they're going to try to trade Jalen Ramsey. And we know that Tyreek Hill is supposedly not somebody they're looking to move, but they also let the cat out of the bag that no one has asked about him. There's a lot to figure out there in Miami. Where do you start with this? What are you gauging with what the situation is? This is a team that was super hopeful for the future. Now it seems like they're at a big crossroad.
I mean, that is exactly what it is, Ben. And this is, I think it's the worst position to be in the NFL as we get close to the NFL draft. It's who are we, and what is going on? That's what it feels like with the Miami Dolphins, where it's like it's a bunch of veteran players, it's a bunch of other young guys, but there's no real direction of are we moving forward or are we moving backwards? And really, you cannot say this full story without going back to last offseason when the Dolphins made these critical decisions for their team where they decided to, they extended Jalen Ramsey as soon as Patrick Surtain became the highest paid cornerback in the NFL. They renegotiated with Ramsey to make him the highest paid corner once again. They also readjusted Tyreek Hill's deal as well a few weeks before that to make him happy as well. And earlier in that offseason, they allowed a bunch of homegrown talents like Andrew Van Ginkel and Christian Wilkins and Robert Hunt to all leave in free agency. And as a result, we all saw what happened last year where they also extended Tua and he did not play a full season. They did not have the year that they wanted this past year. And now here we are a year later, and the guys that they paid from Jalen Ramsey to Tyreek Hill, they're in a situation where it's like, where are these guys with the roster? Now, Chris Greer, their GM, did mention at that press conference that Jalen Ramsey, they've had these discussions over the last couple of weeks with his agent, and they believe it's the best to move forward without him. There was no reason given as to why they're doing this, because if you look at the Dolphins secondary, it is not the most loaded thing in the world. If you look at the fact that they just paid Jalen Ramsey, if you look at the fact that if they were to trade him, there is no real cap savings by moving on from him. There are some question marks as to why they're doing this. And the bigger question mark is if they'll even be able to trade him, because they did pay him $4 million in a bonus earlier this offseason, but any team acquiring him is going to pay him about $21 million for this upcoming season. You have to ask the question, do I want to pay $21 million for Jalen Ramsey, who is still a very good cornerback, but I wouldn't say he is at the top of the NFL the way he was for so many years. So we'll see what they'll be able to get for him. It's still a big question mark if they'll be able to get something, but they've made it clear that those talks are underway with other teams. The Tyreek Hill element, very interesting as well. It's a player that they gave a lot of money to last offseason. They fully guaranteed his salary for this year. And like we said last week on the show, I just have a hard time seeing a team looking to trade for him. So Chris Greer openly saying that no team has really tried to trade for him kind of tells you the full story. But really, you have to look at the full big picture of this Dolphins roster and where they are. They were a playoff team a couple of years ago. They played in that wild card round versus the Chiefs in that freezing cold temperature game in Kansas City where they lost. And ever since there, they've tried to continue to push forward, and it's kind of failed. And it was kind of cringy watching the press conference of Chris Greer on Tuesday where he was asked all these questions. He kind of put his hands up at some points and was like, he just didn't have answers. Like at one point he was asked a question, who are the leaders of this team? This was the answer that he gave.
But I do think in-house, when you have guys like Zach Sealer, just to name a few, like I mean, you could say Tyreek, Waddle, Alec Ingold, Austin Jackson. The offensive line guys love, those guys. They lead differently. They're quiet guys and how they do it by example and stuff. So
I mean, you hear him say Zach Sealer there, who is a really underrated player for them, and then goes into a pause, mentions Tyreek Hill, who I don't think you should be mentioning him right now of the offseason he's had. No mention of Tua, who was the franchise quarterback you paid last offseason. It's like, where is this team and locker room right now? And you look at the fact that they have allowed so many young, homegrown players to leave, like I mentioned before, with Robert Hunt, Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel, and all these other players as well, Javon Holland this past offseason. If you're a young player in that locker room, you get drafted, you expect to perform, you expect to get paid by your team. That has not been the mantra by this team. This team has been more of, let's trade for players. Let's trade for Tyreek. Let's trade for Jalen Ramsey. Let's trade for Bradley Chubb. And let's pay all of those players. So this team kind of feels like they're truly at a crossroads. And they have this top 15 pick in the draft. We'll see what they do. It feels like they hit on their pick last year of Chop Robinson. But for the most part, it's a bunch of guys on this roster with not a real direction. If you remember, before the season ended, I put Chris Greer on the hot seat. And their GM had to come, their owner, Stephen Ross, had to come out and say that we are keeping him as the GM. He also mentioned we're keeping the head coach and Mike McDaniel. But this is a pivotal year for them, and Greer has been there for well over a decade. He has overseen a number of rebuilds and tearing down the roster and rebuilding the roster. And the last rebuild was a bit of a successful one because they were able to get all these really good players and make the playoffs, but still, they have now won a playoff game, and now it is one of the longest droughts in all of American sports. So they have a lot to figure out over here in Miami, and this is a roster that right now is truly in the middle, where it's not a rebuild, but it's not in fully compete mode. You look at the Bills, you look at where they are, they're clearly the number one team in the AFC. I guess the only thing in the AFC East, the only thing going right now for the Dolphins is the fact that the Jets and Patriots are also kind of in a rebuild right now. So that could be your advantage in the AFC East. But this is a roster right now that is in true no mode, and we'll see what to do with Jalen Ramsey. I don't think the book is fully closed on Tyreek Hill either so far. Again, it's a very hard thing to trade. Cutting is essentially impossible right now with him, but this is a situation right now that I don't think is anywhere close to done. And we'll see what they do with the draft. Maybe they decide to move back a little bit and get more picks. But this is a team that really needs a lot of help and really needs to get younger as well.
Okay, so what about Mike McDaniel? He obviously has been somebody who's, been successful relatively there. He's had a lot of success when Tua's been healthy and been on the field, not so much when he hasn't been. What do you think his future looks like, and how secure is his job right now?
Well, I would put him in the same bucket as Chris Greer because the owner, Stephen Ross, when the season ended, when he put out that statement, he mentioned both of them. I've mentioned this a couple of times here on the show over the last number of weeks, but when an owner has to come out after a season and announce that you are coming back, that is the hint, you better do better next year or else. We've seen it many times over the years. I remember the Lions did it with Matt Patricia. I remember the Bears did it years ago with, I believe it was Matt Nagy. Like, this happens from time to time. When a team puts out a statement, eventually you better perform or else. I remember the Falcons did it with Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff. It happens every single year with an owner where they put it out. This year, we saw it for a number of teams. The Giants did it, the Colts did it, and the Dolphins did it as well, and they included McDaniel in that equation. One of the interesting things that happened in that press conference on Tuesday with Chris Greer, which I found to be noteworthy when it comes to the head coach, is he was asked about, is there any lessons you've learned over the years as being a GM? And one of the things that he answered was that sometimes I kind of ask my head coach for their opinion, and I kind of go with what they say. And it kind of felt like he was throwing the head coach under the bus. I don't know if that was McDaniel. Maybe it was a previous relationship with Brian Flores. But I found that to be very interesting. And you kind of know inside of a building whenever you feel the pressure. And it feels like Chris Greer is feeling the pressure right now in Miami with everything that is going on, the situation that they're in, the players who they have paid versus the players who they have not paid, their salary cap situation, where their roster is, who the leaders are in the locker room, and the head coach as well, who has had some success, but there have been some questions with him as well when it comes to whenever the starting quarterback goes down, what happens? When it comes to adjustments mid-game, that's been a big criticism of Mike McDaniel as well. So it is a big year in Miami coming up this year. They have a big draft coming up here next week. They have to hit on their draft picks really from top to bottom and find some of that cheap young talent they continue to develop. But I think there is pressure going into this year, not only with Chris Greer, but also with Mike McDaniel going into this season, because I do believe the owner, Stephen Ross, considered moving on from at least one of them after the season. He decided to hold on to them, but they have to perform this year and show some real success, not just in regular season, but also in the postseason, something they've not had under this leadership so far.
Another team that has been in a crossroad the last couple of years, they finally decided, you know what, we're going to go ahead, bring in new blood with a head coach in Kellen Moore. They decided they're going to stick with their quarterback, Derek Carr, and that is getting complicated already because it was revealed last week that Carr is dealing with a shoulder injury that very well could impact his availability for this upcoming season. Like I mentioned on our Monday episode, he missed 7 games in 2024, none of which were foreign shoulder injury. The year prior, he did play through an AC joint sprain. That was something that obviously caused him a lot of pain, but not necessarily clear whether that is tied to this injury right here, right now. What does this injury, though, mean for the Saints moving forward? And are there any draft implications?
There's a lot of layers to this, and this was before I was off these last couple of days. But let me just say this now. We have not heard the end of this, and something feels very, very fishy here. And I'll say this now. I don't think Derek Carr wanted to stay with the Saints anymore at the start of the offseason, whether that was a trade or a cut. I think he wanted to be done over there. This injury that is popping up now, it does stem from that AC joint from a couple of years ago, but after weeks of everyone staying quiet all offseason long at the beginning of the offseason, the team eventually just restructured his contract on March 8th, right before free agency. And they can do that whenever they want. They didn't need Derek Carr's permission to do that, to lower his cap hit for this year and basically bump it over to next year where it's going to be a big number, $62.9 million. But I don't think Derek Carr wanted the Saints to do that. I think Derek Carr, at the start of this offseason, he and his agent, I believe they wanted to get out of New Orleans and start fresh somewhere else. And eventually they just restructured his deal after weeks of talking to each other, whether it was an extension. His side made it very clear they're not doing a pay cut. He had this 1-year deal, which was guaranteed some of it, but not fully guaranteed all of it. But some of it was guaranteed for injury. So there was an avenue there for him to stay on the roster. So it was a bit of a complex situation. But I think if it was up to Derek Carr, he would have loved to get out of New Orleans at the start of this offseason. They ended up keeping him. And the Saints have been awfully quiet about all of this. Some people in the NFL right now believe Derek Carr is just trying to force his way out of New Orleans and get a divorce right here, right now. So I don't think this has anything to do with their draft plans. I think the Saints going into this offseason, their GM, Mickey Loomis, new head coach, Kellen Moore, their plan all along was to go out here and find the quarterback at some point in this draft, whether it's number 9, whether it's in the second round. They have done extensive work on this quarterback class, from Cam Ward, who of course is going to go number 1, to Shedeur Sanders, to Jackson Dart, to Jalen Milrow, and on and on. They have done extensive work on all the quarterbacks here. They might take one at number 9. They might take one later, but this Derek Carr injury that came out all of a sudden on Friday and was reported, I don't think that was the team revealing this. The timing made it sound very weird. People around the NFL believe Derek Carr has been trying to get out of New Orleans, and the Saints restructuring his contract was something he wished they did not do, but they did it. It essentially marries him to the roster for this year. If they really want to move on, it's going to be very painful from a cap standpoint. You'll probably have to do it after June 1st, but it is a situation right now where I don't think Derek Carr wants to be there, and this situation is super awkward right now in New Orleans. And again, like I said in the beginning of all this, I don't think we've heard the end of this, and we'll see if the Saints have anything to say publicly, but to this point, they have been awfully quiet about this because there is something that just is not adding up right now.
They hold the 9th pick in the upcoming draft. Do you think they use it on a quarterback?
It's definitely up for discussion. The talk around the NFL, not from the Saints building, is that they have been doing a lot of work on Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback. The element of Shador Sanders possibly slipping to number 9 and being there is definitely there. But we're going to talk more about the quarterbacks here in a second, because what the Giants are doing there at number 3 and how they're having all these private workouts of quarterbacks really has a ripple effect throughout this draft. But if you ask me right now if the Saints are taking a quarterback at number 9, I would lean towards yes, but I think it's truly up in the air right now. But what I would say is this Derek Carr news that happened on Friday that came out, that has no implications at all as to what they're doing. I mean, I think when the news came out, the reaction by most people, including me, was, oh, wow, the Saints must take a quarterback now at number 9. They've known something is up with Derek Carr for a while. I don't think they knew this potential of a season-ending shoulder surgery was out there, was a real possibility. But now it sounds like his people have put it out there. But I think they were planning on taking a quarterback regardless, whether it was a number 9, whether it was later in the second round, whether it was trading back into the first round. It's worth noting in the career of Mickey Loomis dating back to 2007, he has never traded down in the draft. He's only traded up. He's only known the word aggressive in his career. So it would not surprise me if they try to trade back up for a quarterback if they don't take one at number 9.
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump right ahead to the New York Giants and the work that they've been doing with the quarterbacks that are potentially going to be there in the draft when they have the 3rd pick. They also have been busy this offseason because they brought in Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, but doesn't seem like that's going to stop them from taking a quarterback, and definitely not stopping them from bringing in guys, because even though we are now less than 2 weeks away from the draft, they're still bringing in dudes. They're bringing in new guys. They've brought in, close to all the top 10 guys. Whether this is to be somebody that they take with the 3rd pick, or maybe they take them a little bit further down the road, remains to be seen. But there's definitely quarterbacks in play for the Giants. What do you make of all these late visits?
So this was always the plan for the Giants, was to bring in all these quarterbacks for these private workouts last, week before the draft, 8 days before, to go around the country and do these private workouts of quarterbacks. And the 3 that were left were Shador Sanders, the Colorado quarterback, Tyler Shuck from Louisville, and then Jalen Milroe from Alabama. They're going to travel to all 3 of those and do private workouts. They already had a private workout of Jackson Dart, so that was already taken care of. But those are the quarterbacks right now that they have been focused on. But what makes this really interesting is the fact that they are doing and lumping in Shador Sanders with Tyler Shuck and Jalen Milroe for a team that is picking number 3 overall. That kind of tells you that they are probably leaning towards not taking a quarterback at number 3, which means taking whichever prospect is left there from Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, and then finding their way back in, or just taking one there at the top of the second round with those quarterbacks. And you look at Shador Sanders, if he starts to slip, that is a trade back into the first round. Tyler Shuck, and then, of course, Jalen Milroe are likely top of the second round or trade back into the first round. I mean, really, this entire thing, when it comes to the quarterbacks that they are meeting with, including Jackson Dart as well, who, again, they had that previously a couple of weeks ago, this feels like a situation that is brewing right now where the Browns are number 2, unlikely to take a quarterback. Giants are number 3. At least right now, it's trending towards unlikely. I do think some people in the building are like, if we really want to take Shador, or we're really going to risk it and try to trade back in, why not just take him here? I think that's a conversation that is ongoing right now. But I look at the top of the second round in the draft. Cleveland picks number 33. Giants are picking at number 34. And you look right now at the draft with the Steelers at 21. They're really the pressure point in all of this. If you're looking to trade back into the first round and get a quarterback, you're likely looking at that pick over there and saying, if Shador is still there come 21, we have to trade in front of Pittsburgh. If Shador is not there, then we'll just trade back in at any point and try to get your quarterback, whichever one you have as QB3 in this draft. So I think a lot of these teams, like we spoke with Mike Renner on yesterday's episode, there are a lot of teams in this quarterback draft class that like this class, but they don't love this class. So you're not looking to take these guys high in this draft. But if you really want to get a quarterback, you're going to come back in somewhere to get them. So I think the Giants are doing all their work over here to try to figure out this quarterback draft class and figure out who that guy is. Ben, I do believe there is a conversation right now going in that draft room about should we take Shador at number 3 or should we just roll the dice and wait over here? Because that generational talent or just blue chip talent is there waiting for you with Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. Why not just take him instead of putting all the pressure on Shador being a number 3 overall pick? Or do we just take him and say, screw it, we're doing it? So I think that conversation is going on in that building, but they've done their work on Shuck. They've done their work on Dart. They've done their work on Miller, and all those guys are right there at pick number 34 in the second round, whether it's a trade up or just sitting there. They have done all their work that is necessary to be ready for all the scenarios come draft next week.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, we had Mike Renner on the show yesterday. If you haven't listened to that, go back one episode. He talks about all the top quarterbacks. He particularly focuses on the fact that he is a number 3 quarterback that's different than most. Most of the guys out there in the top, 100 big board mock drafts, they've got Jackson Dart third off the board. He thinks that Dylan Gabriel is the guy to keep an eye out on who could actually be somewhat of a starter in the NFL, which is kind of the bar, which is definitely low for the quarterbacks this year in the upcoming draft. But go back, listen to it. It's great stuff. And finally, before we get out of here, we got to talk about a Dallas Cowboy legend who is hanging it up. Tyron Smith is signing a one-day contract later today to retire after 14 seasons in the NFL, 13 of which were with the Dallas Cowboys. Last year was with the New York Jets, so it didn't go that well. But 8-time Pro Bowler, all-decades team member, who's the stalwart of an offensive line for years in Dallas. What's going to be your lasting memory of him? And do you think that he's got any chance that he will be wearing a gold jacket in the future?
I mean, first of all, it is one of their all-time greats in franchise history. I mean, when you look back at those Cowboys teams back in 2014, 15, 16, 17, that's an era of Cowboys football that even though they didn't make it to a Super Bowl or a conference championship game, those were really fun teams with Tony Romo, the DeMarco Murray days, Des Bryant. They had Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, Tyron Smith. Just a really, really fun team, fun offense. And he was a stalwart of that offensive line. And again, that is going to be an official press conference coming up later today. Similar to Teron Armstead, who retired last week. Somebody who struggled to stay healthy. He never played 14 or more games since 2015, but he truly battled week to week just to get on the field. And when he was out there, it was literally like going at a brick wall. I mean, the guy was, you couldn't go through him, you couldn't go around him. And it was truly a special time for Cowboys football. He signed that very, very big extension early in his career, an 8-year deal worth over $100 million. He played all 8 years of that contract with the Dallas Cowboys. Just when you look at that era of offensive tackles in the NFL during those 2010s, 2015s, and 2020s, just so many great offensive tackles in football. Like, people look at the fact that he was an 8-time Pro Bowl, but didn't really have many All-Pros. Look at the guys he had to go up against, from Joe Thomas and the Jason Peters and the Teron Armsteads and Lane Johnsons and all those really great offensive tackles over the years. I'm missing a couple of guys, Trent Williams, of course, but so many great offensive tackles during that era, and Tyron Smith was definitely one of them. And this offseason, Ben, has really become a crazy offseason with a bunch of really big name retirements. When you look around from last week, we didn't even mention him, but Patrick Peterson also retired last week in the NFL. Of course, his teammate Zach Martin retired a few weeks ago. We had Julio Jones retire. We had Teron Armstead, Brandon Graham, Sam Hubbard, Jason Peters, another really great offensive tackle. So it's been quite the offseason with many big name retirements around the NFL, and Tyron Smith is the latest one, but his time in Dallas was truly a great one of the best at what he does, and he calls it quits right now. And listen, he could have played more if he wanted to. I know he battled so many injuries, but he made a lot of money, had a great career. Why bounce around from team to team? Just call it a career now, and he'll have that press conference later today with Jerry Jones and himself there at the podium.
And the gold jacket, potentially?
I don't think he's first ballot. I think the 2030 class right now has a bunch of guys who have a better chance at that, but I think he's somebody who will definitely be in consideration eventually for the Hall of Fame. It's going to be a fun debate. I think he is somebody who, again, was one of the best at what he does. 8-time Pro Bowler, does not have the All Pros, but there's a good reason as to why he didn't. There were so many great ones during that era, and a lot of them who are very well deserving of being Hall of Famers as well. So I think he's somebody who will eventually get in, but I think it will take some time.
Gotcha. All right. That's all I got for you here today, Ari. Make sure you guys are subscribed on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. On YouTube, you get a little bit of a preview of what's going to be on the next day's show a little bit early with some of the shorts that we put up. Make sure you're subscribed there so you don't miss those. And yeah, that's it. Glad you're back, Ari.
I appreciate it, Ben. That will do it here for our Wednesday, April 16 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. We will be back here tomorrow as we will officially be 1 week away from the NFL Draft in Green Bay. More talk, more chatter, more rumblings, more rumors, what's real, what's not. We will talk all about it here tomorrow morning. We'll see you then.